Mr. Barrera?
I'm sorry. Good morning. I was logging in.
That's all right. There you are. Okay, have we got everyone we need?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, and the interpreter, if you'll please raise your right hand for me. You swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be that you will truly and correctly interpret for the person being examined to the language they understand, and then you will repeat the statements made by that witness into the English language to the best of your skill and ability, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Thank you, sir. Now, if you'll help me to swear the witness in, ma'am, if you'll please raise your right hand.
Por favor, levanten la mano derecha.
You swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
¿Entiende, señora?
¿Ustedes fueron decir la verdad, toda la verdad delante de Dios?
Sí, señor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. And I didn't hear if he answered.
I say yes.
Thank you,
Sorry
ma'am.
about that. Okay.
Not a problem. And sir? Mr. Sanchez, I didn't hear if your client answered.
Yes, he did.
And did he answer yes?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay, you may all put your hands down and I am ready to proceed. Ms. Parker?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, we have some stipulations before we begin.
Yes, ma'am.
The parties stipulate that Mr. Juarez Cantanilla is the father as confirmed by DNA testing. They stipulate to the child support in the amount of $437 and the medical support in the amount of $75 beginning on September 1st, 2021. They stipulate to joint managing conservatorship, geographic restriction, and a standard possession order.
Yes, ma'am.
And the parties also stipulate that for the retro through from 2018 to the present would be $21,700. They stipulate to the dollar amount, not whether or not there is retro.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. And Mr. Sanchez, is that your stipulation?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ma'am, did you understand what she said?
Yes.
And is that your stipulation as well or agreement?
Yes, that's my agreement.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, you may proceed.
Your Honor, the state would like to call Christina Gonzalez.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Gonzalez, did you inform Mr. Cantanilla when you were pregnant?
Yes.
And did you inform him that he was the father?
Yes.
And did you say that there was a possibility that anyone else could be the father?
No.
And was he there doing the for the birth?
No.
Did he have any how much contact has he had with the child since the child's been born?
Well, he just comes and then goes, comes and goes. So I can't really tell how long.
When you say he just comes and goes, do you mean he just comes to visit or he comes to your house and then he'll be there for a while? And
No. I take the child over to his house.
okay, you'll take the child over to his house.
Ms. Parker, can I interrupt you? Who is the interpreter interpreting for?
Mr. Juarez Quintanilla.
Okay, and Mr. Sanchez, can he understand anything that we're saying?
No, very little, Your Honor.
Okay, let's go a little bit slower and let Mr. Barrera interpret for us.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. All right, so just go a little bit slower, Ms. Parker. You may continue.
Okay, no problem. And after you told Mr. Juarez Quintanilla that he was the father, did he express any doubts to you as to whether he was the father?
No, we lost communication to each other.
Okay, and ma'am, if you'll do me a little favor and let her finish her question and let the interpreter say it, and then Once he says it in Spanish,
Oh, okay.
then I'll let you answer for me,
Okay.
okay?
Thank you.
Cuando usted avisó al papá que él era el papá, I'm sorry, Ms. Parker, can you repeat the question?
I'm trying to remember exactly what I said. Sorry. I asked her whether Mr. Juarez Quintanilla expressed any doubts as to whether he was the father of the child or not.
Cuando usted avisó al papá que él era el papá, ¿él tuvo dudas que él era el papá?
And now you may answer, Bev.
We lost communication.
No teníamos comunicación, perdimos comunicación entre unos y otros.
Ms. Parker?
And has Mr. Sanchez ever provided, I'm sorry, Mr. Juarez Quintanilla, has he ever provided you with any type of financial support or Daniel, the child in this case?
El señor Juárez Quintanilla le ha dado manutención a usted durante ese tiempo.
Apenas comenzó, me da un money order nomás.
He just started making one money order this month.
And do you
Este
remember how much? Do you remember how much?
Go ahead, Ms.
¿Y usted se
Parker.
acuerda cuánto fue la cantidad?
$300.
$300.
Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness.
Yes.
Ya
All
no tengo preguntas para ese testigo.
right, Mr. Sanchez, questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez, are you married?
Señora González, ¿usted está casada?
Sí,
Yes.
Yes.
And when did you marry?
¿Cuándo se casó?
2013.
2013.
Do you remember the month?
¿Usted se
July.
acuerda el mes?
July 2013.
Julio 2013.
And who are you married to?
¿Y con quién
Rosendo.
está casada?
Rosendo Marchand.
Rosendo Marchand.
And are you still living together with Mr. Marchand?
Yes.
¿Y usted todavía está viviendo junto con el señor Marchand? Sí.
Yes.
So how could you know before the DNA testing who was actually the father of the child?
¿Cómo podría saber usted antes del examen de ADN quién era el papá del niño?
Porque I was with him, and since personal relationship couldn't continue, so we stopped the communication.
Yo estaba con él, pero la relación personal no pudo seguir, por eso paramos comunicación.
And sexual intercourse, I know it was just with him.
Y nomás teníamos relaciones sexuales con él.
And with him, you mean my client or your husband?
No,
¿Usted dice de él a su esposo o al cliente, señor Juárez Quintanilla?
their client.
El cliente.
And ma'am, did you ever attempted to obtain child support from anybody else besides my client?
Your
¿Usted
Honor,
aceptó-
Your Honor, objection relevance, whether or not she tried to obtain child support from someone else doesn't negate the fact that she told him that he could possibly be the father. And there's a DNA test proving he's the father. And all the statute requires is that he was aware that there was probable paternity, not whether she was 100% sure that he was the father.
And Your Honor, that's our position, that he didn't find out that he had a child until after the DNA results came back. He knew she was married to somebody else, and all along she told my client that the father was somebody else. The father of her
Esta
children was
posición de
somebody else.
nosotros que no nos dimos cuenta que él era el papá después del examen de ADN. Ella estaba casada con alguien más y él pensaba que él era el papá.
And I'm going to sustain the objection. One moment, ma'am. I'm going
Okay.
to sustain the objection, and you can ask those types of questions, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Ms. Gonzalez, is this the first time that you request child support services? Child support payments from my client?
Yes, it's the first time I request payment for your client.
Have
¿Esa
you
es la
ever,
primera vez que usted está pidiendo manutención del cliente mío? Sí, es la primera vez.
have you ever filed child support help from any other male regarding this child?
¿Usted ha pedido una caso de manutención por alguien más que no sea el señor Juárez Quintanilla?
Your Honor,
No.
objection relevance is the same as the objection I made previous to as to whether it's not relevant whether she asked anyone else.
Opongo esa pregunta porque no está revelante que si ella ha pedido manutención por alguien más.
Sustain. You can ask another question.
Sustain. Puede ser otra pregunta.
And ma'am, when did you, I need your testimony that you informed my client, Mr. Quintanilla, that he was the father of Daniel. When did you actually tell my client, Mr. Quintana, that he was the father of Daniel?
When
¿Cuándo
he was
usted le
at-
dijo al señor Quintanilla Juárez que él era el papá de Daniel?
Now you can
Well,
answer, ma'am.
when he was around a year and a half,
Cuando él tenía 1 año y medio por ahí.
because we never have communication because he would be running away from me, say it like that.
No tuvimos comunicación porque estábamos moviéndonos de él. Algo así.
So is it your testimony that you told him when the child was a year and a half old or 1 year and a half ago? I didn't understand that.
A year when the child was a year and a half old.
¿Usted está diciendo 1 año y medio cuando tenía el niño, 1 año y medio o hace 1 año y medio? Cuando el niño tenía 1 año y medio.
And isn't it true that you also requested that my client be designated as the father for Aileen Gonzalez?
Y no es cierto que usted pidió que el papá, el señor Juárez Quintanilla era el papá de Aileen González.
Your Honor, objection relevance. Eileen Gonzalez is not a party to this case. I mean, she's not the child that this case is subject. She's not the subject of this case.
But
Sustain.
Opongo esa pregunta porque la niña González no es parte del caso.
do you have any other children, Ms. Gonzalez?
Señora González, ¿usted tiene otros niños?
Yes, I have 4 children in total.
Sí, tengo 4 niños en total.
Is Aileen Gonzalez one of your children?
Yes.
¿La niña Aileen González es una de sus niñas? Sí.
Isn't it true that you thought that Mr. Quintana was the father of Aileen?
Your Honor, objection
¿No es
relevance.
cierto que la
It's
señora... Okay.
Overruled, you
¿Cómo esa
can
pregunta?
ask. And you can answer, ma'am.
Ma'am, isn't it true that you thought that my client, Mr. Quintana, was the father of Aileen Gonzalez?
¿No es cierto que usted pensó que el cliente mío era el papá de Aileen González?
Yes, I did mention for Eileen Gonzalez, but we went through court. But my husband was filed. He adopted her legally. The state, he is the father now legally.
Sí, yo pensé que era el papá, pero mi esposo adoptó a la niña. Él es el papá legal.
So there has been some confusion in your life as to who's the father of of your children. Isn't that true?
So ha
From
habido
the-
confusión que usted no sabe quién es el papá de de sus niños, ¿correcto?
I know the father from all my children, and from the first child that I had with Juan Carlos Gonzalez, which Aileen Gonzalez, that's the only child I did not knew.
Yo sé quién es el papá de todos mis niños. La única que no sabía era Eileen González.
You mean he's the father of that Daniel? Is that correct?
He
Que
knew
es el papá de Daniel, ¿es correcto? Él sabía.
Juan Carlos Quintana knew he was the father of Daniel.
I have no further questions from this client, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Any other questions, Ms. Parker?
Yes. When was Daniel born? What is his birth date?
27/12
And when were you married to your current husband?
on July 13th, which from what I understand, he does not
Wait,
become.
yeah. Don't just tell me when you were married to him. Say that again. When were you married to him?
July 2013.
So you
Cuando
were,
está
Herrera.
casada con el señor, julio 2013.
so you were not married when Daniel was conceived.
So, usted no estaba casada cuando se embarazó del niño Daniel.
No, ma'am. No, sir.
And
No, no estaba.
did Mr. Juarez Quintanilla, did he know you were pregnant?
¿El señor Juárez Quintanilla sabía que usted estaba embarazada?
Yes.
Sí.
Your Honor, I have no further questions for this.
All right.
Yo no tengo preguntas para ella.
Mr. Sanchez, any other questions?
Not from this client, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Call your next
Yeah.
witness, Ms. Parker.
Your Honor, the state calls Mr. Juan Juarez Quintanilla.
El
Quintana?
estado llama Juan
Quintana.
Juárez Quintanilla para testigo.
You may proceed.
Mr. Juarez, you were having relations with Miss Gonzalez during the time the child was conceived, correct?
Señor Juárez Quintanilla, ¿usted estaba teniendo relaciones con la señora González?
¿Cuándo?
When?
When the child was conceived, which is in the end of 2011. December.
Cuando se embarazó del niño al fin del 2011.
2011.
Sir, I can't hear you very well. Could you move up a little bit towards the,
No lo podemos oír.
Sí.
Puede acercarse un poco.
Sí, pero-
thank you,
Pero póntela.
thank you.
Pero acércate un poquito.
Talk real loud, sir.
Ok.
Hable recio, por favor.
Sí, claro.
All right.
Ah,
You
Yo
want to ask a
dejé-
question?
Yo dejé de ver a la señora Cristina cuando se juntó con su señor porque me pidieron que los dejara en paz. Al principio, hace años, me habían dicho que ella me
Ay,
dijo que la niña Eileen era mi hija.
I stopped seeing them. I lost communication with them when she got with the other person. They told me to leave them alone. Siga.
Your Honor, objection non-responsive. That's not the question I asked.
Sustained. Why don't
Pongo
you-
porque no contestó la pregunta que pregunté.
And why don't you ask your question again, please?
Okay, well, I'm gonna ask a different question, but when you stopped having communication with her, was Daniel born?
Cuando usted paró de tener comunicación con la señora, ¿ya había nacido el niño Daniel?
No, fue mucho antes que yo tuve comunicación con ella.
No, it was much late before that I stopped communication with her.
Did you know she was pregnant?
¿Usted sabía que ella estaba embarazada?
No,
Okay,
No.
okay. But you're aware that if you have relations with someone without protection, there's a possibility that they could get pregnant, correct?
objection, Your Honor, that calls for speculation.
Overruled. You can interpret that, Mr. Barrera.
¿No sabe usted que teniendo relaciones sin protección, la pareja puede salir embarazada, ¿no es cierto?
Sí, así es eso.
Yes, it is.
And when did you find out that Ms. Gonzalez believed Daniel was your child?
I'm sorry, ma'am. Can you repeat the question?
When did you find out that Daniel was your child?
¿Cuándo se enteró usted que el hijo Daniel era el hijo suyo?
Tiempo después, cuando ella me dijo que me iba a poner cargo sobre Aileen.
Time later, when I found out that she was going to put me on child support for Eileen.
And when was that?
¿Y cuándo fue eso?
No puedo acordarme de la fecha exacta, ¿verdad?
I
Pero
can't remember of the exact date.
But has it been years or months?
¿Ha sido años o meses?
hace muchos años, desde que se abrió el caso de Aileen.
Several years when the case opened for Eileen.
Okay, so you've known for several years that there's a possibility that Daniel could be your child.
So usted ya sabía por años, muchos años, que usted podría ser el papá de Daniel.
No, yo no sabía.
No, I didn't know.
Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness.
Yes,
Ya
ma'am.
no tengo preguntas para este testigo.
Mr. Sanchez, do you have any questions for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr.
¿El señor
Quintana,
Sánchez tiene preguntas?
Mr. Quintana, when you had sexual relations with Ms. Gonzalez, did you use protection?
Señor Quintana, cuando usted tuvo relaciones sexuales con la señora González, ¿usted usó protección?
Y algunas veces, mayormente.
Yes, sometimes, the majority of the times.
Okay, and you mentioned Ms. Parker asked you, when did you know that Daniel was your child? And you answer after Aileen was born. Is that correct?
La abogada Parker le preguntó a usted, ¿cuándo supo usted que el niño Daniel era el papá, que usted era el papá de Daniel? Y usted contestó que después de que la niña Aileen estaba nacida, ¿es correcto?
Sí, así es. Fue cuando ya después nació y que pues quería abrir el caso y no sé qué hizo, ¿verdad?
Yes, that is the truth. It's whenever I found out whenever the baby was born and she was trying to open a case.
But isn't it true that you just found out today that the DNA testings came back positive for Daniel? That's why you disputed that both babies were yours?
Pero no es cierto que usted se dio cuenta hoy que usted era el papá legal por el examen de ADN del niño Daniel. ¿Y no es cierto?
Hasta que hicieron el ADN, pues dijeron que era mi hijo, right? So, hasta ahora me di cuenta.
Until they did the DNA and told me the DNA result, that's when I knew.
Did Ms. Gonzalez ever told you that Daniel was somebody else's child?
¿La señora González le dijo a usted que el niño Daniel era de alguien más?
De las veces que traté de comunicarme para preguntar sobre Aileen, me dijo algunas ocasiones que pues no sabía de quién era, ¿verdad? Y esto y lo otro.
For the times that I tried to contact her to see how Eileen was, I asked how she would. Perdón, ¿puede repetir la contestación?
De las veces que yo hablé con ella y que le preguntaba por Aileen, me había platicado algo así, ¿verdad? De que no sabía de quién era el niño, right?
Okay. When I would call her to ask for my child, Eileen, we would talk and she would say, I do not know who the dad is.
No, I'm talking about Daniel. When did you, isn't it true that Ms. Gonzalez told you that someone else was the father of Daniel?
¿No es cierto que la señora González le dijo a usted que alguien más era el papá de Daniel?
No, pues sí, muchas veces pues quería su marido.
Yeah, several times that it was the husband.
So my question and the question before this court is, when were you told that this baby was yours, Daniel?
So, la pregunta para usted, la pregunta frente a la corte, ¿cuándo le dijeron a usted que usted era el papá de Daniel?
Hasta que me dijeron los resultados de que era mi hijo.
When I got the results that he was my son.
I have no further questions from this client, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I have a few
Ya
follow-up.
no tengo preguntas.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, isn't it true that Eileen is older than Daniel?
¿No es cierto que la niña Eileen es mayor que Daniel?
Sí, es más grande.
Okay, because
Yes, she is bigger.
do you remember testifying that you found out that Daniel was your son after Eileen was born?
Usted se dio cuenta que, no es cierto que usted dijo que usted se dio cuenta que Daniel era su niño después de que nació Eileen.
No, fue después, ¿verdad? Porque Aileen es más grande. Cuando yo le
No, it
hablaba,
was later because Eileen is much older.
Isn't it true that Eileen's 2 years older than him?
¿No es cierto que Eileen es 2 años mayor que Daniel?
no sé exacto con cuántos años va, ¿verdad? Pero es más grande la niña.
I'm not sure exactly how many years, but I know she's older.
Okay, and when you say that Miss Gonzalez told you that her husband was the father, did she just volunteer that information or did you ask her?
Y cuando la señora González dijo que el esposo era el papá, ¿ella le dijo voluntariamente o usted preguntó?
Por medio de un caso que se abrió hace años sobre Aileen.
It was because of a case that had opened up in the past for Eileen.
Okay, so when that case opened up in the past for Eileen, which you previously testified was years ago, since then you knew there was a possibility that Daniel could be your child.
So, desde el caso que se abrió de Eileen, que fue hace unos años, usted dijo que usted sabía que era el papá del niño.
No, no sabía.
No, I didn't know.
I'm not asking if you knew for sure 100% DNA. I'm asking if you knew there was a possibility that Daniel could be your child.
Yo no estoy preguntando que si usted era el papá 100% por un examen, pero que usted tenía la posibilidad que usted era el papá.
No, no tiene la posibilidad porque dejamos de hablar por años.
No, I didn't have it wasn't a possibility because we had stopped talking for years.
Okay, Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness.
Ya no tengo más preguntas para este testigo.
Mr. Sanchez, do you have any other questions for this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, and Ms. Gonzalez, you're representing yourself today. Do you have any questions that you wish to ask this witness?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Parker, any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, and with that, do you rest?
Yes, Your Honor, the state rests.
All right, and Mr. Sanchez, do you have any witnesses you wish to call?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, and Ms. Gonzalez, do you have any other witnesses you wish to call?
No, ma'am.
And will you, Ms. Parker, please give me a brief closing of what you're requesting besides the stipulations?
Okay, Your Honor, we're requesting the retroactive period would be from 4/28/2017, which would be 4 years prior to the date of filing to the present, but we only have income information through 2018. He doesn't have the information for 2017, and he doesn't remember what he was making in 2017. But from 2018 through the present, it would be $21,700 would be the retroactive child support amount, and that's what both parties have. That's what we stipulated to.
Okay, and did you stipulate to an amount to pay if that's ordered?
Yes, no, Your Honor, we didn't stipulate to that. It was requested that you.
Okay,
Set that.
thank you. And Mr. Sanchez, would you like to give a little brief closing of what you're requesting?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, Ms. Gonzalez has been married since 2013. Has been the testimony, or it's our position today that my client didn't know that Daniel was his son. He wasn't really made aware until these child support proceedings were filed, and he wasn't actually verified that Daniel was only his child. Child support proceedings were filed for both kids, and it is our position that if he was ever known, or if an allegation was ever known that he was Daniel's father, it was until after mom filed the child support proceedings. And therefore, we're requesting that retro be charged only for up to the filing.
And that was in 2021, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor,
Yes.
Your Honor, may I say something else, just very briefly?
Certainly. Yes, sir.
And Your Honor, and both parties' testimony is consistent with the child's names, wherein Adeline Juarez was the child that Ms. Gonzalez thought that it was my client's child. That's why it reflects his name on the birth certificate, whereas I believe the other child, but reflects. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I don't, what's the? I'm not sure what's the second child's name, last name, but I believe it's Gonzalez. I believe it's the husband's name. Yes, the second child, the child that is actually my client's biological child, has the husband's birth certificate. I mean, the husband's last name.
Your Honor, well, at this point, can I say something else, Your Honor?
Sure.
The standard is whether there was a probability that he knew that he could be the father. All he's saying is that after the child was born, she got married to someone else. He knew that after Eileen was born, when Eileen is 2 years older than him, so everything would have been after Eileen was born. And also, he didn't deny that he was sleeping with her during that period of time. So there was always a possibility. And he stated that he's called and she's told him that this other person was the father. But why would someone just randomly volunteer that to you, that someone else is the father, if you didn't ask whether this was my child also? And because he's not saying that he didn't know there was a possibility that he's the father. He's saying he didn't know for sure until today. And that's not the standard for retro, is whether you knew for certain. And even if she did think other people were the father, as long as he knew that there was a possibility that he could be the father, then the retro should be awarded.
And may I ask you a question, Ms. Parker? How much is the amount of regular child support that y'all stipulated to?
$437.
Thank you. All right. The court finds that Mr. Flores Quintana is the biological father of the child. The court approves all of your stipulations and orders Mr. Flores Quintana to pay retroactive child support in the amount of $21,700. A judgment is granted thereon, and he is ordered to pay that judgment the rate of $40 per month beginning October 1st, 2021, and thereafter on the first of each month until the child reaches 18 years or graduates high school, whichever is later. Then child support shall be ordered in the amount of $477 per month to be paid on the first of each month until paid in full. All other relief requests is hereby granted per your proposed order. Thank you all.
Okay. All right, so what I need you guys to do is log